I'm just sitting here drinking some tea from my porg. Porg tea. Alright guys, so I am back, and for those of you who don't know what's going on, this is part 2 of the John Campea show that was done earlier today on Tuesday, January 16th, 2017. Unfortunately, after I got through the main part of the show and we were about to go into live questions in that show, had a technical glitch happen and it froze the show, so I needed to come back and we're going to do a part 2 video here. And thank you to all you guys who are back watching live again with me. So, listen, it is that part of the show now for me to go to the live questions. Apparently, when I try to bring up the Twitter questions, my programs freeze. So I'm not going to do any Twitter questions on that. I will, however, go over to the Super Chat. So we start off with the first live question today. And the first live question today, if I can get this all set up properly, there we go. The first live question today comes to us from Orange Hand, who writes, if they wanted to, could a studio prevent sites like Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic from rating their films? Number 2, what is your favorite line from a Superman film? Well, those are 2 separate questions. As far as the Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic score go, here's the thing. There's nothing a studio can do about it. Because remember, first of all, Rotten Tomatoes did not give something a score. Rotten Tomatoes doesn't give a score to a movie. All Rotten Tomatoes does is they go out, get all the scores, they just look at all the movie critics out there, collect their scores, and just average it out, do the math, and say, here's what the rating is. This many percentage of film critics like the movie. This many percentage of film critics don't like the movie. So first of all, like Rotten Tomatoes doesn't give a score to any movie. Second part is, how could any studio stop somebody from saying, oh, I'm just going to go out and count how many critics liked it and how many didn't, and just tell everybody what the count is? You can't. There's nothing a studio could do about that whatsoever. That's like saying, a movie studio saying, hey, you can't wear brown shoes. Why the hell do you have the right to tell me if I can wear brown shoes or not? We just can. So no, there's absolutely nothing that a studio can do about that, and nor should they have any ability to do anything about that. All right, next up is Tony Bush, Porg. And Tony Bush writes, August 3rd, 2018, Ewan McGregor and Haley Atwell star in the Disney live-action Winnie the Pooh movie titled Christopher Robin. Disney is prepping him. Yeah, and that actually, I think, Tony, you brought that up the other day, and I totally whiffed on it because I totally forgot about that. Back in, like, April, they announced that Ewan McGregor was coming on to star in Christopher Robin. And this movie, for those of you who haven't heard about it, is not to be confused with Goodbye Christopher Robin, which is a movie that came out in 2017 with Domhnall Gleeson. This movie, Christopher Robin, reminds me a lot of that Robin Williams Peter Pan movie. Because the basic idea of the movie is this. Christopher Robin has grown up and is being played by Ewan McGregor. It's a live-action film with some CG elements. So Christopher Robin has grown up and he's lost his imagination. He's lost his wonder for the world. So Winnie the Pooh and friends come back into his life to help him rediscover the magic of life. So it reminds me an awful lot. The sounds of it remind me an awful lot of, say, Peter Pan, the Peter Pan film that we got from Robin Williams and Steven Spielberg. It sounds a lot like that, and I love that movie. I think that movie's great. So I'm looking forward to this film. I think this film sounds like it could be a lot of fun. Mark me down as being somebody who's excited for it. All right, next up, also from Tony Bush, who writes, with Clint Eastwood's next directed film opening in 3 weeks, how do you rank him against other names like Cameron, Nolan, and Scorsese? Hashtag changeling. Here's the thing. To me, I'm interested in any movie that Clint Eastwood directs. Because he has directed some amazing films. I don't put him in the same category, though, as a Scorsese or as a Christopher Nolan. Because he's also, in the midst of putting out some amazing films, he's also put out some very bad films. He's put out some bad films that have not been all that great. And honestly, this next one he's doing, I'm not all that interested in it. The simple fact that he's not even using actors in the movie, he's using the real heroes, which that sounds great for a YouTube video. But you're making a movie. So you're going to put people in the movie. Forget the fact that they're the real people. You're putting these people in the lead roles of this movie who are not actors. You lost me. You lost me. I mean, why would I go to an NFL game if the NFL coach is going to say, hey, in this game, ladies and gentlemen, instead of starting my regular wide receiver, I'm taking Billy, who works at the supermarket up the street. Billy is 48 years old and weighs 225 pounds, and he's 5'2". But I'm going to put him in. Anybody can play football, right? I mean, I wouldn't be interested. So it's an interesting concept. Maybe it'll work. If there's any director out there who could make something like this work, it might be Clint Eastwood. But I got to admit, I'm pessimistic about it, so we'll have to just wait and see. Next up, Siobhan Dixit writes, thoughts on 2.5 Men. I love Charlie Sheen. Never thought it was a funny show. 2.5 Men, to me, reminds me a lot of another show that a lot of people seem to like that I just never thought was funny, which is Big Bang Theory. I just don't think Big Bang Theory is funny. I mean, now granted, I've only seen like 6 or 7 episodes. But every time I try it, like once a year, I'll go, okay, I'll give another episode a shot. And it's like, this isn't funny. It's just irritating laugh tracks with these characters who are supposed to be nerdy, who are clearly not written by nerdy writers. I just don't find it funny. But a lot of you guys love it. That's great. 2.5 Men is another one of those shows to me. I just never thought 2.5 Men was all that funny, was all that entertaining. But I know a lot of people love it, and that's great if you do. I just never got it. Let's see. Cobra writes, John, watch Paddington 2 ASAP. I love the first one, and I think this one's even better. I did finally go out to see Paddington 2 last night, and I will be putting a review up a little bit later today for Paddington 2. Keep your eyes open for that. Thanks for bringing that up, Koba. Siobhan Dixit writes, Bonjour, Jean. Do you think the Wakanda scenes from the Infinity War trailer happen at the very end, or they haven't revealed the climactic battle of the film yet? Well, no, I think there are a couple of shots from the Wakanda scenes in the Infinity War trailer that probably happened kind of near the end of the film, or at least in the third act. Let's put it this way. I don't think that big battle scene with the two armies running over the hill at each other with Captain America and Hulk and, you know, everybody else running beside him, Winter Soldier running beside him, that happens in the third act. For sure, that doesn't happen in the first act, okay? But I also think there's shots from Wakanda in the trailer that probably do happen in the first and second act. So, like a good trailer, I think what we've seen have been little smatterings of things that happened in the first act, second act, and third act. I don't think they're all from the third act. I don't think they're all excluded from the third act. I think we're going to see it peppered out throughout the film. Ben Rayner writes, over or under 40% that Tom Holland makes a cameo in Venom. And if said cameo does happen, would it be worth it? For me, if it's just a quick cameo, then why have him in the movie? It makes no sense to me. Well, first of all, I'm going to take the under on that 40%. I don't think Tom Holland's popping up in the Venom movie at all. I would probably take the under on 10%, to be honest with you. If you set the line at 10%, I'm probably still taking the under on that. But the second part of your question there, Ben, is if they did put Tom Holland in a cameo in Venom, what would be the point? Here's the point. The point would be to put a definitive stamp saying this Venom movie happens in this wider cinematic universe. Something as small as Tom Holland popping up for 5 seconds as Spider-Man, the point of that would simply be to make a very definitive statement that this, and I don't know that they want to make this statement at all, but I'm just saying if they did want to do this, then having Tom Holland appear, the value of Tom Holland just appearing in a quick cameo is that what it accomplishes is putting a definitive stamp that this Venom movie is a part of our wider cinematic universe. That, and to do it in a very visual way that cannot be, you know, rationalized around or thought about or whatever. Nope. Tom Holland pops up as Spider-Man in a Venom movie. There's no questions then at that point. This is the MCU. Or in that outskirts of the Sony MCU verse, whatever that is. So if they, I don't think they're going to do that, by the way. But if they did, that's what the point would be. Because you wouldn't need Tom Holland for anything more than just a quick 15-second cameo. You wouldn't need him for any more than that if that's all you wanted to accomplish. So that's why they would do it if they did, but I don't think they're going to do that personally. All right, we move on now. KW Garrett 83 writes, is it worth paying extra to see 70mm film showings? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I mean, now look, if you ask Quentin Tarantino thinks everybody should watch every film in 70mm from now to the end of time in a real movie theater with film projectors as opposed to digital projectors. Quentin also probably thinks every picture should be taken with a Kodak, but then whatever. I love Quentin Tarantino. I just think he thinks very ass backwards when it comes to technology. Anyway, for me, no. To me, there is no extra value. It is not worth paying any extra. It's certainly not worth paying extra to make a movie in 70mm. I certainly don't see any value as a film goer to see it in that. And you can scream and yell at me all you want. John, you don't appreciate blah, blah. I'm just being honest with you. As a film goer, I'm just going to go see a good movie. You putting it in 70mm isn't going to make the acting performance any better. It's not going to make that visual effect any better. It's not going to make the jokes any funnier. It's not going to make the dramatic tension feel any more tense. It's not going to do any of that. So to me, it doesn't matter. So if you're asking me for my opinion, is it worth it to pay extra to go see a film in 70mm? My answer is no. But that's just me. You might have a different opinion. That's totally cool. But since you're asking me, that's my opinion. All right. Shivam is asking, over or under 20%, Hugh Jackman makes a cameo in Deadpool 2. Would love to see Wade run into him on the street, not as Wolverine, but as himself. Okay, that's a very interesting distinction. We're not asking, does Wolverine make a cameo? You're asking, does Hugh Jackman make a cameo? If that's the question, and you're setting the over-under at 20%, I'll take the over. I think there is over a 20% chance that Hugh Jackman makes a cameo in Deadpool 2. I think there's a 5% chance that he even actually cameos as Wolverine. But that's a separate question. Does Hugh Jackman, just as himself, cameo in this movie? I'm going to take the over at 20%. I wouldn't take it over if it was at 50%. If it was at 50%, I'd take the under. But at 20%, if that's the line, I'm taking the over. For sure, absolutely taking the over. All right. Next one comes to us from Josh Clark, who writes, Luke Evans' Batman. Perfect pick. Fan since AMC. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Luke Evans. I've got a really, really cool Luke Evans story that I'll tell another. I've told it before. Maybe I'll tell it again another time. But I've got a great Luke Evans story with me and Ann and Luke Evans. But I'll tell that another time. I think Luke is a tremendous talent. He's a tremendous actor. Is he the perfect pick to play Batman? No. Is he a good pick to play Batman? Sure. Him and 100 other good actors would be a good pick to play Batman. Sure. But, again, you guys know my whole opinion on that. Would X actor be good to play X role? Well, as long as X actor is a good actor and Luke Evans is a good actor, for sure. Why not? I don't know that he's the perfect pick. I don't know that Luke would be in my top 5. But, hey, let's just put it this way. If they announced tomorrow that Luke Evans was going to be the new Batman, I'd have no problems with that. No problems with that whatsoever. I think that would be a really interesting pick. All right. Cobra writes, you think we will see more Jumanji after Welcome to the Jungle success? Oh, they'd be stupid not to. Jumanji's probably going to top out around $750 million. Wrap your heads around that. Wrap your heads around that. Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, is probably going to cap in around $750 million when it's all said and done. That is nuts. And I guarantee you, Dwayne Johnson on his most optimistic day never thought Jumanji was going to make this much money. I mean, who would have thought? Let's go back a year. Let's go back 6 months and say, hey, how much you want to bet that Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle is going to make more money at the box office than Justice League? Come on. Come on. Who in their right mind would have taken that bet? Nobody. Certainly not me. No way. No way. It's just crazy. So, yes, I can guarantee you right now they're already penning a script. They're already trying to work out schedules. I guarantee you plans are already underway for them trying to get a new Jumanji movie put together as fast as they can because they want to strike while the iron's hot. You know what? It's a movie that didn't just make money. Jumanji Welcome to the Jungle was really fun. And it was really entertaining. I was very pleasantly surprised. Like, I was hoping for something decent because I'm a big fan of The Rock and I like Jack Black and Karen Gillan and all that kind of stuff. I was hoping for something good, but I didn't have very high expectations. I thought Welcome to the Jungle was a tremendously entertaining film. Not in my top 10 of the year or anything like that, but I thought a very entertaining film. And Ann and I went to go see it when we were out in the Boston area. And no, we saw it in Canada. Pardon me, Anne hadn't seen it yet. I had. So we went out to go see it when we were in Canada, and she loved it. She loved that movie. So I would be all for them doing another one. So yes, I absolutely believe they're going to do another one. Anthony R. writes, I know you are not affiliated with Collider, but will you, Christian Harloff, John Schnapp, Mark Ellis, and Dennis Zen do a commentary on The Last Jedi just for fun? Nope. Don't get me wrong. Like I said before, I still have a great deal of personal affection for a lot of the people over at Collider. Absolutely, I do. But I am not making videos for Collider anymore. Now, hey, if all those dudes want to come over here and do a commentary video with me on the John Campea YouTube channel, I would love it. I'd throw a party. It'd be fantastic. But there's no way Collider's going to let them do that. So, no, I am not going over to Collider to make videos for Collider. If I'm going to do a commentary video on The Last Jedi, it'll be here on my channel with my audience. So that's probably the way I would do that. Let's see. Ben Rayner writes, every time I hear Les Mis, I find myself thinking about that Seinfeld episode where George gets that song stuck in his head. There are so many times in my life. Like, take Les Mis out of it for a second. There are so many times in my life when something comes up that reminds me of a Seinfeld episode. Come on. And anybody who's watched Seinfeld, you probably at least once a week, something happens in your life that makes you think of a moment in a Seinfeld episode, right? Seinfeld, I mean, is it fair to say Seinfeld is the greatest sitcom of all time? It's difficult to argue against that. It is difficult to make a real sound argument against Seinfeld being the greatest sitcom of all time. And the instant recallability and the instant quotability of Seinfeld just kind of speaks to that. You know what I mean? I don't think there's ever been a more influential and successful sitcom than Seinfeld. I mean, all right. I could just sit here and think about Seinfeld all day. Okay, let's move on. Ray Valero writes, John, thoughts on the new Ivan Drago's son casting? Yeah, I'll talk about this probably a little bit more on tomorrow's show, but for those of you who have heard, they have cast the guy who's going to play Ivan Drago's son. And it's this professional boxer, and he's a beast of a dude, like just a big, huge, hulking dude. Now, I know some people will be concerned, as I normally am, about why did they hire a non-actor to play this role? And here's why it doesn't concern me so much. But John, you were just talking about how they shouldn't put in non-actors to play lead roles. Yes, absolutely. But here's why I believe this scenario is a bit different. Is because if you look back at Rocky IV with Ivan Drago being played by this big hulking guy who you could argue at the time was not all that good of an actor. But here's the thing. How much acting did Ivan Drago actually have to do in Rocky IV? I mean, really, all Drago did in IV, and all they needed him to do in that role was be physical. Just be in the ring, physical, look super strong, and make mean-looking face. There wasn't a lot of acting required apart from physicality acting. There wasn't a lot of acting required in the role. I suspect that if Drago's son plays that same kind of role, where all they need the character to do is look very physically intimidating, move physically, and who's going to move physically better than a professional boxer? Just make sure you move right, get the physicality down, and don't worry about the heavy lifting when it comes to acting. They'll have other people around him do that. And they'll just make him look good. That's what they did for Drago in Rocky IV. And if that's what they do with the son of Drago in Creed II, then that's not a problem. It's not a problem. Like George St. Pierre could be in Captain America Winter Soldier because there wasn't a lot of acting required. They just needed his physicality. And they did, and it worked fine. I just don't believe we're going to see a lot of heavy lifting as far as acting goes from this new guy. And if that's the case, then it's perfectly fine. If he does have to do a lot of acting, and he plays like an important, antagonist like Carl Weathers did as Apollo in Rocky 1 and Rocky 2, then this could be a disaster. But if it's as I suspect, and the role doesn't require that much acting, I think they'll be just fine. All right, next up, Brendan Mills writes, are you excited for a second Black Widow movie? Lucy was an awesome origin story, so creative. Yeah, we talked about that story the other day, that, Marvel is at least looking at doing a Black Widow film. They have certainly not announced that they're doing it. Marvel has made no announcements, but there are reports going on that they've hired a screenwriter, and they're looking at it. They're looking at maybe putting a script together, see how it turns out, and they're investigating it. So maybe we'll see a Black Widow movie at some time. And like I said yesterday, I'm not excited about it. I've said this ever since the first Avengers. In the Avengers universe, I think they're great characters in the MCU, but I have no interest in seeing a solo film of either Hawkeye or Black Widow. I just don't have an interest in seeing movies about those characters. Standalones. I love them as supporting characters in the MCU overall. Like when Hawkeye shows up and Black Widow show up in any MCU movie, I think it's great. But I'm just not interested in solo movies from either of them, to be perfectly honest with you. All right, we move on now. Starman writes, John, I still think DC should reboot, but are you really expecting a huge box office difference between a Batman movie reboot and a DCEU movie? Yes, I am. Look, there is a history, there is precedent that proves if you reboot a franchise that maybe the audience has given up on, and you give them a fresh face and a fresh story, and you say we're starting over, there is history that proves the audience will come out and support that. History proves it. Hell, just look at Spider-Man. They pulled the plug on Spider-Man, rebooted him with Tom Holland, audience came out in droves to support it, and they love it. I mean, Hulk hasn't gotten a standalone movie, but they rebooted that character into the MCU, and people are now clamoring for a Hulk movie. So yes, I believe that the box office for Justice League proves that the audience has pretty much abandoned the DCEU. If you can't get them out to see Justice League, for heaven's sakes, with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman and Aquaman and all of them in the same movie, finally, the movie that was supposed to compete with Avengers, and you can't get people to come out to see that, then yeah, I believe that means the audience has abandoned it. And history proves that when that happens, if you try rebooting it, put in brand new fresh faces, show them this is a brand new take on this story, if it looks good, the audiences will come back and support it again. History proves it. So yes, I do completely believe that it could make a big difference. It doesn't guarantee, not at all. It does not guarantee it'll make a difference. It doesn't guarantee it'll save it. But I believe history proves that it can work. And I think they should give it a shot. I don't know that they will, but I think they should. I think it would be wise for them to do that. All right. Siobhan Dixon writes, why do the Oscars only recognize artistic indies but not mainstream ones like Logan, Baby Driver, Dunkirk, etc., which are at the same standard if not better? The Artist is the best picture of 2011. Really? Yeah, really. I'll stand by that. The Artist... Look, is The Artist the film that I specifically would have chose? Nope. But is The Artist worthy of that award? I absolutely 100% believe so, yes. I really do. The amount of skill and craft that went into that movie, amazing. And I'm sorry, but the Oscars don't only recognize indies. Have you looked at the nominees lists over the last couple of years? Several big, high-profile films are on there. I mean, for heaven's sakes, what movie has no film in history ever won more Oscars than Lord of the Rings: Return of the King? Is that some little indie film? No, and the Oscars gave it more Oscars than they've ever given any other film. No other film in history has won more Oscars than Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. There have been two other films that won as many. You know what one of them was? Titanic. The second biggest box office blockbuster of all time. Was that some little artistic indie? No. The Oscars just award excellence. The Oscars do not care, nor should they care, if the movie's a blockbuster or a tiny indie. They just want to award excellence. That's what they do, and that's what they should do. So, Siobhan, I think if you look at the actual track record and you look at the actual history, the Oscars are more than willing. The Oscars love being able to recognize big blockbusters. Because that brings more attention to the Oscars if they nominate big blockbusters, but only if the big blockbusters truly deserve it. Look, I was talking a little bit earlier. I'm not sure Baby Driver deserves an Academy Award, to be honest. And Baby Driver is more of a small indie than you think. Logan was shot like a small indie. I mean, so I disagree with your assessment there, Siobhan, I really do. The Incredible Hulk writes, "Hey, John, which writer turned director in 2017 had the better directorial debut?" Oh, this is a good question. Taylor Sheridan for Wind River or Aaron Sorkin for Molly's Game? Man, those are two great movies. Two great movies by great writers who made great directorial debuts. Both with Taylor Sheridan from Sons of Anarchy, by the way. He was the... Do you remember him? Taylor was the deputy sheriff in the first few seasons of Sons of Anarchy, before his character got run over by a car. Spoiler. Then he became like one of the most sought-after writers, and now he's a director. And he directed Wind River and was amazing. I'll give the nod to Aaron Sorkin for Molly's Game, because while Wind River and Molly's Game are both my top 10 films of the year, Molly's Game was actually my number 2. Molly's Game was my number 2 favorite movie of the year. Just behind Logan. So I'll give the slight edge to Aaron Sorkin, but fantastic question, Incredible Hulk. That's a great question. What a great job both of these guys did. Adam K. writes, "Who deserves the most blame for the DCEU's issues?" Dude, that's a question for a half-hour-long video. The truth is, there is no one person to point the finger at. Some people want to point the finger at Zack Snyder. Some people want to point the finger at Kevin Tsujihara. Some people want to point the finger at Jeff Johns. Some people want to point the finger at, the president over there. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there were a lot of times that a lot of balls got dropped. There were a lot of things that fell through the cracks. A lot of mistakes have been made over there, which is why you're seeing Warner Brothers now doing these big overhauls and shaking things up over there. I don't believe there's any one person to point the finger at, to be honest. And I think a deeper assessment would probably point to a systemic problem over there that they're trying to correct, that they're trying to fix, that they've recognized. Look, no matter what happens, I always say this for Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers has never really just taken a good enough attitude. It strikes me that Warner Brothers tries to identify problems and tries to do something about it. And you know what? That's the mark of a winner. Maybe the DCEU has had struggles. Okay, obviously they have to some degree. But the mark of a long-term winner doesn't mean they win every game, but the mark of a long-term winner is somebody who recognizes there are issues, works to identify those issues, and then does something about them. That sounds like common sense, but a lot of people don't do that. Warner Brothers is at least always in the process of trying to improve. It doesn't mean they'll get it right every time. Not at all. No studio will. But I believe long-term winners have the kind of attitude that Warner Brothers has. And that's what gives, constantly, no matter what happens with the DCU, I constantly have faith that they will make a great DC set of films for people to love and enjoy. That's why I just have a lot of faith in them. So anyway, I'll still hit the panic button now again when they do something stupid for sure, but I'll always maintain long-term belief in them because they seem to be a place that is committed to identifying and correcting problems. And what more can you ask from them? Let's see, Jack Spittle writes, thoughts on Happy Time Murders and when can we expect a poster or trailer? No idea. No idea when we can expect a poster or a trailer. I'm very excited for Happy Time Murders. I believe when I made my video, it's on my YouTube channel right now, my most anticipated films of 2018. I can't remember, did I put Happy Time Murders in my top 10 or did I give it an honorable mention? Either way, Happy Time Murders is mentioned in that video. Check it out if you get a chance. I'm very much looking forward to it. For those of you who've never heard about it, it imagines a world where these puppets are actually live living things. And there's this old show called the Happy Time Gang of puppet shows. And now it's modern day, and some of the cast from that show are being murdered. And it's called Happy Time Murders, and it's a murder mystery with live human beings and living puppets. To me, it sounds crazy. I'm excited about it. I cannot wait to see it. Let's see. Fong Lee writes, any Lucifer thoughts on Season 3 mid-season finale? I haven't seen the mid-season finale yet. When did it air? Did it air last night? Did it air today? I'm not sure. The last episode I saw was the flashback episode when Lucifer and Metadil come to Los Angeles for the first time, and they've got to find Metadil's necklace. That's the last episode I saw. I don't think that was the mid-season finale. So if I'm right, then I haven't seen the mid-season finale yet. I've really enjoyed Season 3 so far. I love this show, Lucifer. If you're not watching Lucifer, get on the train. It is a funny, entertaining, beautifully done character in Lucifer Morningstar. It's just, I adore this show. I really do. Spencer Smothers writes, when do we get a Marvel Phase 4 announcement similar to the Phase 3 announcement at the El Capitan? After Avengers 3 or 4, or will we not even get one? I don't know, man. It seems really early to even be asking that question. We still haven't even got Avengers 3 yet. We still have Avengers 3, Ant-Man, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Avengers 4. I mean, we've got like a whole ton of movies we still got to deal with here. So I think it's even too early to even talk about it. My guess is sometime before Avengers 4 is when I do think they'll make a big grand announcement. Whether that'll be at D23, whether that'll be at Comic-Con, whether they do another special event like they did last time. Not really sure. But at this point, I mean, we still got 5 films to come before we're even going to need to talk about this stuff. So it's a little bit early in the game, Spencer, I think. All right. We move on now to Thunder Knight 19, who writes, which sequel do you think was more disappointing? Kick-Ass 2 or Kingsman the Golden Circle? Kingsman the Golden Circle. I still think Kick-Ass 2 was a good movie. Nowhere near as good as the first one. I don't think Kingsman the Golden Circle was a good movie. I think it was a poor movie. I know after the first time I saw it, I still said, well, no, it's still good. It's still okay. It's just not as good as the first one. But then I saw it a second time. I'm like, nope. It's just not a good movie. Kingsman 2, The Golden Circle is a poor movie. It's not the worst movie of the year. It's not a train wreck, but it's not a good movie. Like, at all. So while I was kind of disappointed in both of them, definitely the bigger disappointment to me was Kingsman 2, The Golden Circle. Let's see. Star Wars Canon Library writes, do you think Lucas would have still sold Lucasfilm if the prequels had been better received? No. No. Look, the main reason George Lucas sold off Star Wars was because he was very deeply hurt. He's a human being. He's a god amongst men. I worship at the altar of George Lucas. But he was very personally hurt. And, you know, I think it made him very sad, the response that the prequels got. And look, the prequels deserved the response they got. But I think George Lucas took it very personally. I think it hurt him very deeply. And I think that created an environment where he was willing to part ways with Star Wars and collect $4 billion and become like one of the single largest shareholders of Disney stock, by the way. He's crawling in cash. But no, I absolutely believe that had the prequels turned out better and gotten a better response, I think to this day he still owns Lucasfilm. I really do. All right. Sujith Radhakrishnan writes, "Hey John, do you think DC should drop the DCEU and concentrate on making standalone stories? They're good at it. DC should not be obligated to do what Marvel is doing." Well, I mean, I don't think it's an either-or situation. I think what they should probably do, and look, there are many paths to victory. There's no one single path to victory. There are many different paths to victory that they could take. I believe one of the paths they should seriously look at is reboot with Batman and start by just telling some isolated single stories and then gradually put them together into a coherent single cinematic universe. I think the way they did it with the DCU at first was the right approach. I always thought DC should do it the opposite of Marvel. Start with a big team movie and then break off your individual films from there. And I think that was the right approach. It didn't work out the way they wanted it to. So far. It didn't work out the way they wanted it to. So now try the opposite approach. Start with Batman. And then build your cinematic universe around Batman. I think that's probably the best path to victory, but there are other ways they could do it. There are. And maybe they'll take another one of those paths. But that does happen to be the path I would personally take myself, which is why I'm not in charge of the studios. All right. Next one comes from Devontae Brown, who writes, John, this Dumble F website just disappointed me and reported on a rumor that was started on their own video show. Have you complained about this before? Look, man, I'm not here to talk about it's individual stories that other people are doing. I don't even know the story that we're talking about, so I can't even really give an opinion on that. So I can't address that. I just can't address that. All right. Let me see. Now, I did not ask you guys to send in super chat questions on this particular thing, but I know a couple of you guys did. So let me just address a couple of these questions that you guys have sent in while we were doing this part 2 of this video. Andrew Hogue writes, thoughts on the new synopsis for Solo? Honestly, did a new synopsis for Solo drop? If so, I have not seen it yet. I've been doing this show for the past couple hours. So if a new synopsis has dropped in the last couple hours, I have not seen it. So that's the first thing I'm going to do when we're done with this show today. And Master619 writes, what is your favorite MCU movie and why? Which is your least favorite and why? Well, that's really, really big questions. I'm not going to go into all the why, but obviously my favorite MCU movie, since it's also my #1 favorite comic book movie of all time, is the first Avengers movie. I still think the first Avengers movie is the gold standard for comic book movies. Least favorite? Probably Iron Man 2. If we're not going to count the Netflix stuff, and we're not going to count the television stuff and all that kind of crap, and we're only counting MCU films, I will probably say Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 is probably my least favorite out of all of them. Yeah, those are the two. All right, guys, that will do it for me for part 2 of today's episode of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for coming back and joining me for this. Don't forget, guys, click the subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel, click the thumbs up button, leave some thoughts and comments below in the comments section there, and make sure you're following me on social media, simply at John Campea. And listen, guys, if you're not yet, consider becoming a Patreon supporter of mine. Head on over to www.patreon.com/JohnCampea to find out how you can become one of the people responsible for making these shows possible. And maybe after reading all the information there, if you become one of my Patreon supporters, awesome. And if not, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just glad you're here being a movie fan with us. All right, guys, that will do it for me for today. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.